Welcome to a Parallel Project Training APM Project Fundamentals Qualification podcast based on the APM Body of Knowledge 7th edition. You should be using this in conjunction with our e-learning, podcasts and potentially a tutor-led course. For more information, please visit www.parallelprojecttraining.com.
Okay, welcome to another Parallel Project Training podcast. And this is one for you if you are doing the Project Fundamentals qualification based on the Body of Knowledge 7th edition. My name is Michelle Greaves and I'm joined today by John Bolton. So hello, John.
Morning.
And we've just had a chat about reporting, but we're going to move on to talk about reviews now. So different types of reviews that happen in projects. And we're going to cover things like decision gates, post-project reviews, benefit reviews, and project audits. And we'll probably end up kind of sort of mentioning the life cycle throughout that. But there is another podcast for you on life cycles as well. So, John, can you talk to us a bit about some of the reviews that happen in the life cycle?
Yeah, the life cycle is just a description of the duration of the project broken down into chunks.
Yeah.
So, the general principle of project management is you plan something, then you do it. And there's always an opportunity for not having done it. So, when the most important thing is to look at what you're doing and how you're doing it and how well you're doing it. And if it's not going well, adjust what you're doing. But you can only do that if you're reviewing it in some way formally, but in other ways informally. So it's the job of the project manager to try and keep the ship on course, really. And so in the absence of any reviews, the project manager ought to be able to get to the end point without too much difficulty. The trouble is, of course, that other people get involved and other people are interested. And there's always an opportunity if things get in the way and the project managers need some help. So decision making is informed by reporting. We talked about reporting earlier.
Yeah.
So, reporting is about just keeping track of how things are going, producing an auditable report, a trackable report, so that people can see how things are going and be reassured, really, if things are going well, and to be able to help if they're not. The reviews is a way of recognising those reports in a formal way and reviewing them and making sure that they're used to a decision making, really. So they're broken down into a number of sections. You've got decision gates, which they call decision gates, and the idea of a decision gate is that it's literally a gate. It's like you open the gate and you go through. Presumably never to come back, but
also referred to as gate reviews, aren't they? Or
yeah, they are.
Gates.
You'd hear people, and there's a little bit of confusion. And as soon as you write down some terminology here, a lot of our customers talk about stage gates.
Yeah,
and so that's a term that was dropped from this syllabus. But decision gates really are the more formal ones. They're the ones that happen at the end of concept and definition.
Yeah.
And really what you're doing there is you're checking that the business case is viable. And at the end of definition, you're checking to make sure the project management plan is adequate to deliver deliver the ambitions of the business case.
And can you go on to the next stage if you haven't got it signed off at that decision gate?
Well, theoretically, yeah. You can. A lot of them are passed with reservations or, but theoretically, no.
Yeah.
But, so the gate is either closed or it's open. But practically what happens is you get to the decision gate and there's a few outstanding issues, but you don't stop the whole project just because of those. But, theoretically you could, I suppose. But so decision gates are there for people to scrutinise what's been going on, looking at the business case, do the costs outweigh the benefits or the other way around, and if so, what action we blah, 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 blah. So they're quite a formal review, sponsor, project manager, probably some of the funders, maybe some of the advisors, consultants, that sort of thing. The next one they talk about is post-project review. And post-project reviews really are fundamental to sort of the knowledge sharing and lessons learned. So a post-project review, the idea is that you, rather than kind of look forward, you look back.
Yeah.
I kind of think the post-project review is a bit weird, to be honest. You're going to do a 5-year project and wait to the end to decide whether or not, because you've forgotten what happened in year one,
I think it's good practice to capture it throughout, isn't it?
Right, yeah. So I think the whole lessons learned thing should be systemic, and it should be cultural in the business rather than waiting for any formal. But the post-project review has some other roles other than just the lessons learned aspects.
Yeah.
I mean, what they're doing there is making sure that you've hit the success criteria, any outstanding issues are cleared up, final accounts are done, and that sort of thing. So the review would be to make sure that all that's been tidied away, if you like. Customer satisfaction reports are reviewed, lessons learned really for any futures, So post-project reviews.
Who would be involved in a post-project review then?
Moot point, really. I mean, in my experience, they never get funded, so you're always scratching around for anybody to go.
Yeah.
But I think in theory, you'd be looking for the project manager, the sponsor, key customers. Do customer satisfaction surveys, maybe.
Project team.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, the trouble is, almost by definition, it's after the project is finished. So after the project is finished, the budget is gone.
Yeah.
So who's going to pay? So
it's kind of grabbing everyone before they relinquished off to other things. Yeah,
that's right.
It?
Yeah, well, it's not a post-project review then, is it? You'd have to do a post-project review, and so it goes on. But I've seen them combined with like parties.
Yeah.
Where you have a little bit of a bit of a bash, glass of warm wine and some mouldy cheese, and discuss the project and make some records, and then. So I think it's. Post-project, I'm not demeaning them by any way. I think the key for them is the lessons learned.
Yeah.
But I think the key point of those is don't think that you should wait to the end. I mean, if something's going badly wrong and you think it might help somebody to let them know, then let them know.
Yeah.
Benefit reviews happen generally during transition. So they start to appear after transition, rather. So there's a period of benefit realisation after the end of the project. The principle of project management is the benefits happen after the project's finished.
And why is that?
Because that's when the life cycle model says that the products are transited into service.
So we've got to have something in operations for us to see any of the benefits, haven't we?
Yeah, and that's where the iterative life cycles would be different. So if you've listened to the life cycle on podcast on iterative life cycles, the idea of iterative or one of the big ideas is that you get benefits early.
Yes.
So you're dumping product into business as usual in a much more sort of, frequent manner.
Yeah.
So the idea is that you can then start to yield some of that benefit much earlier, which you've got to subscribe to, really. I mean, they're called quick wins, aren't they? So if you can, even if you're doing a project and you can see that there's something that would aid the business now, do it early rather than later. But benefit reviews, the benefit of the entire product is generally once it's commissioned. So a new computer system or a fleet of trucks or whatever it is you've built or building, those things will only really add value to the company once they're in use.
Yeah.
So you see the benefit reviews coming there. And benefit reviews really is the bailiwick of the sponsor.
Yeah.
Because, at this point, the project manager's kicking back in Rio, aren't they?
Everybody else has gone,
they're
haven't
on
they?
the beach, yeah. So it's just the poor old sponsor kind of running around trying to make sure that, everyone's using this thing that we've given to them, this nice squeaky new toy properly, and that the benefits are being realised. So, if you've got a built block of flats and no one's renting them, the sponsor's got a problem. They've got to try and solve that. But they'll only do that by reviewing, how many have been let at a given point in time and what they can do about that,
And they want to realise those benefits because they were the person that quite often kicked off the project at the start with the business case.
Yeah. Well, they're the primary risk taker. They agreed to spending the money maybe years ago in the end, hope and anticipation that at some point they're going to get some money back.
Was it worth it after all?
Well, not many of us would do anything if we didn't think we'd get some money for it. So that's benefit reviews, really. So sponsor, really, project manager's gone. So it's really the sponsor, the business, the key users. And then project audits is it's sort of like the Darth Vader of project management, isn't it? People go in fear and trembling of project audits.
Everyone panics.
Yeah, everyone panics. It's going to get audited. Oh no! So basically, audits are the number of different audits, really. But I think the one we're talking about here is where your auditing process.
Yeah.
So I always think of audits as a form of assurance. It's too late to realise you've done it wrong once you've done it wrong. Yeah. So you try and stop doing it wrong before you've done it wrong. And audits are a key way of doing that. They're part of project assurance. So an auditor's role really is to come along and make sure that what you said you were going to do, you are actually doing. Because the basic principle is if the plan's right, you'll end up delivering the project. But if the plan's wrong and you're following it, then you're going to deliver the wrong thing. Yes.
Yep.
So the whole principle of that is I think that's where assurance and audit got a bad name, because they were kind of saying, well, as long as you're following the plan, I'm happy with that, even if the plan's wrong. So there's a whole idea of audits, and there's a whole idea of like less formal health checks and peer reviews going on.
Yeah.
So they're not in the syllabus so much. So the auditor's role in this syllabus is to look at what you're doing and whether it's what you said you were going to do.
Yeah.
The project management plan is written down, it's agreed with the sponsor, so it's not unreasonable that they expect that that's what you're going to do. There is a less invasive, less Machiavellian role for auditors, where they actually contribute and suggest and help and guide and steer. And if they think that you're doing something that's look a bit wacky, then they'll make it their job to make sure that somebody knows about it.
And that's perhaps more realistic of what happens on a lot of project audits, whereas your more financial audits, when you're having a financial auditor in, that you need to follow a certain process and they want to check that you're doing that, and that's where the kind of formalised audit kind of comes from, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, if you're in the public sector and you're doing anything significant, you're going to be faced with like the National Audit Office type audits.
Yeah.
And I don't think they take any prisoners really.
No, open to scrutiny. So
the one that's missing really for those eagle-eyed amongst you will be thinking, well, what do you do between state gate reviews and the post-project review? Because you do 2 gate reviews at the beginning of a job, one after the concept, one after definition, check the business case, check the budget, and then nothing happens.
Yep. How are you going to check that you're not going off track?
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, the project manager could be wandering around with the fairies for 2 years, and no one would ever know. I think that's a bit bizarre, frankly. And for the purposes of the exam, this is not relevant. But I mean, for the purposes of being a better project manager, you ought to be keeping records. We talked about project reporting.
This is where the reporting comes in.
We talked about reviews. You should be organising monthly, weekly, or bi-weekly, or fortnightly, at some regular, frequent interval, where you are sort of offering yourself up for scrutiny. And I don't think that's a bad thing. That's not an audit. That's just a relationship that you build up with your sponsor and your management team. And it's and equally, you would expect your team to do the same.
Yeah.
You'd expect them to come along on a regular basis, and you to chair a meeting where you're asking them to sort of substantiate the progress. They won't want to do it because they just see it as a bureaucratic overhead. But in the absence of that, you are reliant purely on the informal management by walking about sort of reviews, which are incredibly valuable, but they're not auditable per se, and they're very easy to become casual and unenforceable and of little value if they're not done well. So I think just as a little annex, I'd talk about stage reviews. They are mentioned in the life cycle, so I think it's worth, just talking about those for a bit. But just for those, who are doing the exam, you oughtn't be faced with that question.
Stage reviews are your health checks or your project team meetings. If you're in a more iterative life cycle, it might be your daily stand-ups.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So they're a big part of your project. So I think you're right. It's good for us to acknowledge that here. But yeah, I think we've kind of walked through the reviews that might come up in the Project Fundamentals qualification. So thank you very much, John.
No bother.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast and found it informative. To find out about our training courses, e-learning or tutor-led course, please go to www.parallelprojecttraining.com.